another video. We got another deck profile for you guys, and this is going to be about Kory's Witchcrafter deck.
I don't really know how to say this one. This deck, if it goes off, it goes off. If not, you need to go tempo based, and if you can't keep up with the tempo, you lose. So, and that means for both sides. If I can't keep up with my own tempo, I lose. Everything in this deck, all the monsters discard a spell in order to use their effects, and all the Witchcrafter spells have the effect that during the end phase, if you haven't used their main effect, you can add them back to hand from the graveyard as long as you control a Witchcrafter monster. So you kind of got to balance what you're willing to get rid of in your hand along with what you think you'll be getting back, and it's a lot of brain power sometimes, but once you get going, you're pretty much going. Anyways, I don't know how much I can really say about the deck. I'll just have to start talking about the monsters themselves. Let's begin. Oh, before I begin, the extra deck is just a bunch of targets for the extra deck, which in the inside deck, which I run cherries in the side along with 3 Super Poly. So when we go through these, that's why I'll say what I'll say. Anyways, starting off, I run 2 Janine. She's level 1. She's helpful for copying any of your spells engraved. So if you have like 2 creations engraved for whatever reason, and you're only going to be getting 1 back, you might as well banish the other one. You can get it back with their trap and stuff like that. So sometimes just getting that free search or free special summon from hand or free whatever is more than worth it with this card. So I only run it at 2 because this deck can easily summon it out through any of its normal summons. All the little monsters have graveyard effects that you can banish it from the graveyard, gain special effects. Otherwise, you can, during the main phase, quick effects, so during either player's main phase, you can tribute this card and 1 spell card, and then special summon Witchcrafter monster from your deck, except for one with the same name. So it's kind of got a lot of tagging out with it, akin to stuff like Dream Mirrors or even Cosmo in a way. Anyways, moving on is going into Pittori. She's got the same effect where she can tribute herself and discard a spell to special summon 1 from deck, but she's got the graveyard effect that if you banish her, you pretty much get a Allure of Darkness-like effect, where you can draw 1 card and then send 1 card from your hand, one Witchcrafter from your hand to the graveyard, and if you don't have any Witchcrafter cards in your hand, you have to send your entire hand. So it's great for extra draw power and stuff like that if you haven't used extravagance in the turn, if you just want to dig a little bit deeper, because the main combo in this deck does revolve around a card that makes you discard your entire hand. So sometimes your hand really doesn't matter. Sometimes you can just get extra combo pieces. Anyways, going on, you have Shmeta. Same effect for the first one where you contribute it, special summon 1. And it's also got the graveyard effect where you can pretty much Foolish Burial any Witchcrafter card from your deck. So normally with this effect, you'll banish it, send the trap. The trap will return all Witchcrafter spells that are banished to your hand. So there's a nifty little +5 combo in this deck using her as one of the key pieces. Anyways, that's all the normal summonable Witchcrafter monsters that are level 4 or lower. Going up, we have Adele. Adele is like Witchcrafter Unveiling in a monster. It's also a monster reborn in a monster. I mainly use it as a way to get extra attack in because the beat sticks in this deck are few and far between, and the little guys aren't usually big enough to do what I need them to. But she's good for comboing off, getting free special summons. If you do it right, you may be able to get 2 of the bigger monsters using her in the process, but that's if you open up the right hand. Anyways. Next, 2 Hane. Pretty much the Dryden of the deck, where you can target 1 face-up card on the field, discard a spell, and pop it, pretty much. And if you have 2 of these on the field, your opponent can't target any spellcaster monsters you control with card effects. Otherwise, that's only you can target this spellcaster monster only with card effects. Minus, regular back row, you can still Cosmic Cyclone, but this deck doesn't really care. And then we have Madame Vere, which can blanket negate the entire monster field on your opponent's side of the field as a quick effect. She also has an effect that allows her or any attacking Witchcrafter, hard once per turn by the way, to gain 1,000 for each spell with a different name in your hand. So like, she's the boss monster of the deck. You want to keep her on field. You'll special summon her from the graveyard if ever you lose her. You want her to go off, but running any more than one is detrimental to the deck. And last for boss monsters is Aruru. Aruru helps bounce things, kind of like Altergeist Kory, which just when your opponent's monster declares an attack, you can special summon this. Either target one Witchcrafter spell in your graveyard or one monster on the field and return it to the hand. So it's the free bounce in the deck. It helps protect your monsters if like they're gonna attack over everything and your protection isn't live or whatever. It's also a free special summon, level 8, so you can do some gross things if you really want to. But to each their own. Moving on, we have just the Gamma package. Because all the little guys, all the normal summonable ones tribute themselves off for cost. If they try to ash you at this point, then Gamma becomes live. And a free level 8 synchro that puts banished cards back in your graveyard works really well in this deck. Seeing as how you can just return your little, your small banished Witchcrafter monsters and then get their effects again on the next turn. So this card combos really well in the deck. I really wish I didn't have to run it. I'd rather run Called by the Grave and something else, but hey, beggars can't be choosers, I guess. Anyways, moving on to spells, we have 3 Witchcrafter creation. This is the Rhoda of the deck. You can search any Witchcrafter monster from your deck. It's a hard once per turn, and I'm not going to mention it every time, but all the spells in this deck have the ability that if you control a Witchcrafter monster and you haven't activated the other effect this turn, you can return it from the graveyard back to the hand. So it's where all the resource management comes in. Next, we played 3 Unveiling. This one allows you to special summon 1 Witchcrafter monster from your hand, and if you do, your opponent cannot activate cards or effects in response to your Witchcrafter monster effects for the rest of the turn. And with this being a quick play, you can activate this during your opponent's turn, special something like a Hain or a Vere from your hand if you draw into it, and suddenly they can't even activate, activate anything in response to your Witchcrafter monsters anymore, and that alone in itself is helpful, especially seeing how this deck falls victim to Ash. So sometimes on your first turn, you'll activate this just to special summon so you don't get ashed on your turn. Moving on, though, we have 2 Holiday. This is the Monster Reborn of the deck. You only really need 2 or 3. It just wasn't worth it. Other than that, yeah, it's just the Monster Reborn. 2 Draping. This one lets you bounce spell traps from your opponent's side of the field equivalent to the number of Witchcrafter monsters you control. So if you are later in the game and you're sitting there on like 3 and they have 3 floodgates, you can play this, bounce all 3 of them back to their hand. And granted, it does not take care of the problem, but it does save you for that turn. And I like having 2 because that way during the end phase of my opponent's turn, I can activate 1 and then set the other one during my opponent's turn, and this will come back and I can just keep going back and forth with it so that you can just keep bouncing 3 and it's never really too big of a problem. But that's why I like to run 2, because 1, then you don't get to do that little back and forth. Collaboration, just it helps you win games, makes so any Witchcrafter monster can attack twice. Doesn't have to be on monsters, just you can attack twice during the battle phase. And that's the reason it's another name as well, so you have ways to get it back from the graveyard through its own effect. It works with Vere's different name effect, so it's just in there for that. Next is the last 2. Both of them are the continuous, and these ones have a bit of a weird effect. They have their main effects, where this one, once returned if a Witchcrafter monster you control would be destroyed by battle or card effect, you can, once returned it's not destroyed. And then the other effect, which they both share, is that while they're on the field, instead of discarding a Witchcrafter spell from hand, you can just send them from field to graveyard instead. But if you use that effect, then it doesn't come back during the end phase if you used it during your turn. This one, its effect isn't really used to draw one. I mainly use it so that I have the free negate without having to discard, and it comes back during my turn. So during my opponent's turn, I'll usually send that, so it always comes back, so I always got a free negate somehow, or a free pop or something. This one I like to protect because protection from my main board is always helpful. Anyways, moving on, we have 3 Pot of Extravagance because this deck desperately needs its Pot of Extravagance to work. You need the extra draws. You don't even use your extra deck in this deck, so Pot of Extravagance doesn't matter. Your extra deck is really only used for Super Poly targets or Cherries targets. So use it for the draw. I might try out the new Pot card, but I don't know yet. Got to get my hands on it first. I run one metalfoes fusion. I side the Harpy's Feather Duster, but I like metalfoes fusion because if you don't open up into extravagance, you can discard this and still get something back, so it at least replaces itself. It's kind of like an upstart for the deck without having to give your opponent 1,000 life points. And for the last spell, we run 3 Spell Chronicle. To activate this card, you have to discard your entire hand, and then you banish 5 spell or trap cards from your deck. And that's pretty much all that this card matters for. It gains counters when your opponent activates spells. You can get those spells back through this effect, but you won't use it. Because what you're going to do is you're going to activate this effect, find some way to send this trap to graveyard, and then get all 5 of those spells that this card banished back. The rest of the effect is worthless. It's just an extra card at that point. You just need it to banish 5. The only downside is it does send your entire hand, so if you open one of these in your hand first turn anyways, it makes the combo a lot easier to do. But what this trap does, and this is the only trap I play in the entire deck, you play it as a 3-up because you can target one of your spellcast monsters that's banished in your graveyard, shuffle it in a deck, and if you do, you get a Witchcrafter spell from your deck, any Witchcrafter spell, so it searches the spells, but also if it's in the graveyard, except the same turn that it's sent there, you can banish this card and return every single banished spellcaster and Witchcrafter spell card with a different name from my banished pile and add them to my hand. So these two going together, if I get this combo off, I can sit there with 5 cards in hand, probably a Vere on field if I'm lucky, a Vere and a Hane or something like that. Plus whatever I sent that I didn't use for my discards, but yeah, no, that's the main combo for the deck. For the extra deck, all that there really is like I said, instant fusion targets, self-explanatory, darks, zombies, heroes, and invoked. So super poly targets are usually live. For XYZs, 1 Shaka 9 and 1 Utopic Zexal, I use these in conjunction with cherries. This one more for if I'm going against the Numeron combo, and this one obviously for Zoo. The deck, Zoo suffers without being able to use Shaka 9. Going on to the synchros, I actually have chances to summon all 3 of these. Rarely, if ever, this one. I usually just banish this one with cherries while facing off against Dragon Link. Omega I will actually use in the deck, and Draco Berserker I will use as well because it's not a monster negate, but it does banish something, banish the monster that activates effects. So this one could still be used in its own right. And then moving on to Lynx is just Vere, Hollow Fibrax, Sunlight Wolf, and Isolde. Stop Dragoon. I don't honestly know why I have this one in my deck because they usually probably because I'll see it turn game 1, game 2 side in cherries. I think that was my thought process. Sunlight Wolf because Solomon Great can't play their deck without their Link 2 very well. And then Isolde because if you hit this versus Infernoble, then it can also help cripple their deck by a hell of a lot as well. So the entire deck, like I said, is made for Super Poly and Cherries targets. So you can use whatever you want. These are just the ones I use. Other than that, there's not really much else having to do with this deck. That's about all I got. The deck's pretty simple. You want to go for your main combo, otherwise just negate your opponent's boards, keep attacking, and try to maintain some form of control. It's all tempo based. If you have any questions, comments, or suggestions, feel free to put them down in the comments. Otherwise, have yourself a wonderful day.